Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, the best damn podcast for the best damn football team. I am your host, the Football Grump, and with me as always is Mike the Cranky Fan. What's going on, Mike?
Grump, this is probably the worst night of the year because there's nothing going on. It's that first weekend where there's no more football. We had the All-Star game last night for basketball. Hockey is in that period. They thought they'd be in the Olympics, so there's no hockey. I had to sit around and watch TV shows today. It sucked. I miss sports. Come back.
Did you catch up on anything good?
I caught up on Billions, and that show is probably past its prime, but
I've never
I don't know.
watched Billions.
It's all right. It's getting into year 7, and it's kind of starting to repeat itself a little. And I don't know. It's at that part it's that part of the series cycle where they just drop in celebrities just because they want to have a cameo on it.
Yeah, keep it relevant.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, that's kind of a pessimistic way to look at it because to me, this is the start of the 22 league year. March 16th is the official start with free agency. That's coming up pretty soon. Literally next week, March 1st is the beginning of the combine stuff. And then free agency, they have that weird 2-day, 2-day tampering period or whatever that starts on March 14th. And then the offseason workouts, they start the very beginning of April for the Giants. Any team that has a new head coach starts their offseason workouts at the beginning of April, I think the 4th.
And Grump, you mentioned the combine. There was some concern that the combine would be either canceled or severely, limited in participation because of that bubble thing. But apparently the NFL got rid of the bubble.
Oh, did
clause.
they? That's like today news. Then.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
so
okay.
Everybody will be fully representation by all the, all the agents and everything. So just another little aggravation that was resolved.
Yeah, and I think it was in a certain sense justified, right? They were essentially you're not going to be able to showcase yourself in this bubble very well. Just skip it and go to the pro day. That's our best recommendation. So the NFL kind of caved.
I don't want to get into a whole combine discussion, but really quickly.
We can though. That's what this episode is about. It's about the league year and the start. So hit me with your combine shit, man.
Combine. Do you feel that overall the combine helps or hurts the majority of the the prospects coming in?
In my opinion, most of the takeaways I get from the combine are negatives, but they're not negatives that I wouldn't otherwise get from pro days. So a lot of the negatives are things and they can be positives too, like measurables, right? I don't trust a single college website with guys' measurables. Their height, weight, they're off by 6 inches, 30 pounds. I mean, and there are some, you read the thing, you're like, yeah, he's 6'3" because he looks shorter than me. That doesn't make any sense. So it's a lie. So to me, the measurables are a thing that comes in and it can help or hurt somebody, in my opinion, right? They can validate that they put on weight and that's what I want to see. I want to see that number. Perfect. Great. And these guys do that. But it can hurt because now I found out your real height. Yeah, you're 5'8". You know what I mean? But that's still going to happen at the pro day. And if they choose not to weigh in or measure in at their pro day, because they can choose, I guess, whatever they want. I don't think I've ever seen someone not, I don't know, whatever. But if they choose to opt out of any of that stuff, that's the same thing as pleading the fifth. It's almost like admission by omission.
Mm-hmm.
But, certain guys can improve their draft stock with looking a little better. But most people take away that guys who blow the combine out of the water, we don't really care for the most part. Guys like Byron Jones destroyed the combine. He's an average corner. You know what I mean? The combine, most of the positive results, most of them are things that we can write off as training for the combine. But see, if they go to the combine and they don't perform, it's definitely written as a negative. He didn't prepare. You know what I mean?
Right,
so
right.
I think, but there's other things we're not talking about here. There's the in-person interviews. Those are huge, and players can totally help it. It's just I have no insight into that, so I can't say shit about that. So I think the combine's important. I think fans maybe take too much stock in it because they get excited about 40 numbers, highlight things, especially bench press reps 40 times is a big one. Stuff like that. It can get overblown. but it has a purpose.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
That's my opinion. Pro days, I like the Senior Bowl a lot. I think the Senior Bowl shows a lot of cool stuff.
Well, I just think that practice time when you're doing real reps against real competition,
sure, yeah.
as opposed to running around in your underwear, which you don't do on a real game. So
yeah, how many times has anyone run in a straight line in the NFL? And at the end of the day, does it really
no giant
matter?
Receiver did last year.
Does it really matter if somebody can catch them or not? I mean, either it's a 50-yard play or it's a 60-yard touchdown.
Right.
Yeah. How often is that really the make it or break it, those last 10 yards? I don't know. Whatever. It doesn't matter. The combine is mostly silly, but it has its moments and it has its purposes. The most important thing here is that the Giants are currently roughly $10 to $11 million over the adjusted cap, which is something like $208 million. None of these numbers are clear. I'm going to state that as like a broad thing. These are mostly in fact, they're entirely estimations, and they're taken from different sources. As far as I know, nobody has a completely perfect, accurate cap number. Any of these contract numbers, it's mostly estimations. So we're speaking in that way. Anytime I mention a number.
In each team's best interest not to have that official information out there either.
But I don't even think that people know the official cap number. Like, I don't think they ever know it until it's announced by the NFL. It's just assumed.
But I would think, though, from a strategic standpoint, like if you're the Giants, you may not want other teams knowing exactly what your number is.
Sure.
Thinking about, if they want to try to sign this free agent or whatnot.
And in these days of, like, cap magicianship, I think there's ways of wizarding your way around a dead end, as we've kind of seen.
Well, we're going to need the Wizard of Oz with this team because hopefully we don't.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. They really don't. If they need to just float by this season, they don't need to do much. I mean, they have to get the 10 to 11 to get under the cap, and then they have to get the cap to sign their draft picks. They really only need, like, I don't know, somewhere around $20 to $25 million worth cleared. That's not a ton, but it was Joe Schoen himself that said that he needs to clear about 40. Now, where that number comes from, I don't know. He also said we have 11 draft picks. No one could ever...
If we just want to float along, sure, but I think, these guys were brought in to rebuild
it's time
roster.
to sever heads, right? I mean,
right.
They are not Dave Gettleman, and I don't mean this as like a cheap shot, but like when he came in, he did not sever heads. I mean, there were a couple of moves made, trades to dump guys from contracts, but even in the same situation, he didn't do too much. That was insane. This looks a little close to insane. This is a lot. To get $40 million, this was a tough task, and that's what we tried to do, was to try and set up this offseason, because the only way that you're going to clear about $40 million with this team is to create roster holes. And once you do that, that dictates kind of how you have to set up your draft this year and how you have to attack free agency this year. Now, like I said, $40 million gets them way under the cap where they'll be able to sign free agents this year. So that doesn't mean that these are the end-all be-all. This is the roster and the draft. They'll have some wiggle room a little bit, but I wouldn't expect a J.C. Jackson to be signing here or anything like that, especially if you have anything to say about it.
No, he's not on my team, that's for sure.
But what we both tried to do was try to see what guys would get cut, what moves could be made to get this team under $40 million, and I am not very good at this. I'm going to admit that right from the start. I'm not very knowledgeable about the cap. You're a little bit better at this, so why don't you take us away, and we'll just kind of go through the moves as we go.
Yeah, before we get started, a couple assumptions that I made as I went through this exercise. The first one, and probably the most important one, is I don't care what our record is in 2022. I had a 6-point plan of how I would build this franchise, and one of the points was setting a realistic timeline of when this team would be ready to be in contention for the playoffs and be in contention to be a Super Bowl contender. We're nowhere near either. We're not going to be a playoff team next year. We probably have to take a step back before we go a step forward. I know a lot of Giant fans, that's the last thing they want to hear. So don't hang up and don't hit the stop button right now when you hear that. But if you're going to do this rebuild right, we need to really break this thing down and start over. So to me, if some of the cuts I make don't seem popular or like, oh my God, what are we gonna do about this position? I don't care. You can find replacement level guys to get in, fill holes. If this team goes, 2-15 next year, something in the grand scheme of the rebuild, that may not be the worst thing in the world, based on if some things that we'll talk about kind of fall the right way or not. So the big thing is I don't care what the record is next year. I'm willing, everybody's on the same page, everybody's in the same timeline, everybody's starting right now. So there's no hot seats to worry about anything. Start the rebuild. Second thing, I don't care about faces of franchises. I know a lot of people think that's a big deal and it's important that, and I'm not singling out Saquon Barkley, but, oh, you can't get rid of him. He's the guy that you advertise around. And that's the one where people buy jerseys. That means nothing to me. You know what the face of the franchise for me is? When you walk into MetLife and you see that big banner with the 4 Super Bowl trophies, that's the face of the franchise. And I want to add a fifth to that. So there may be some moves I make that may not be popular because people are, guys are popular guys. They did well in the past. Their names doesn't matter to me. There's a new administration. I'm the new GM right now. I'm cutting bait for guys I think in the best long-term interest.
I love this. This is Cranky fan in his zone.
Yeah. A couple other assumptions that will make more sense as we go along. I'm assuming in this plan I'm not picking up Daniel Jones' 5th year. I know that doesn't really impact immediately me getting down to the 40 million, but it is, a factor in how I'm building for the next year. I'm also, in my mind, not re-signing Barkley after this year. I'm looking to trade him if I can. That is nothing, again, based on his cap savings, which would be 0 for cutting him right now. Has nothing to do with that, but I'm thinking of these cuts as part of a bigger picture of a rebuild. And I'm also not necessarily worried about market value for Barkley. Everybody's like, well, if you're going to trade Barkley, you better get, 3 number 2s and this number 2. If you're cutting some of these guys, some people on the list, guys like Bradbury, who people want cut, you're getting no market value in return for them. So I think the same principle applies for me for Barkley. And I don't want to make this a Barkley conversation because we've gone through this several times. And, I like Saquon Barkley, but to me, Barkley is not the future of this team. And he's also not the Barkley he was when he was a rookie. So I'm not as overly concerned about maximizing my return from him. But again, that's going off on a tangent away from this exercise in getting down to 40 million. All right. So let's do this really quickly, going position by position, what I would do.
Hit me with it.
Okay. First of all, quarterback. Sorry, guys. I'm not cutting Daniel Jones. The cap savings is only $200,000. Everybody has stated on the record that they want to give a year evaluation for Daniel Jones. I am in complete agreement. We've gone through that 100 times with Daniel Jones. The bottom line is he'll be here next year. I thought about, we signed Davis Webb already.
Yes.
For next year. And that's, if they were to cut him, they decided, forget it. I want to get to 40 million. That's an $895,000 cap savings if you do it right now. But something, it's kind of like using your credit card for 2022 already. I'm looking at that as money that's been spent. We're going to leave him on the roster for right now.
Well, yeah, and his role also, he was brought in this year, and he's going to be the Alex Tanney role of the in the quarterback room coach, and he's already said, like, I want to be a coach. I'm going to be a coach. And I guess Brian Daboll believes in him as being a coach. Apparently, he had that role in Buffalo already. I guess he was impressive at it, and so that's why he's here. He's not really backing up Daniel Jones any more than Alex Tanney did, where he threw one pass and handed off every other time.
And I'm going to be honest, like I said in the preamble to this, if Daniel Jones is out for 10 weeks and Davis Webb has to be the quarterback, and we are 2-8 in those games, I'm okay with that. I'm looking at the draft next year. Something, if Daniel Jones is out for 10 games and Davis Webb has to he's place holding for the guy we are drafting with one of the highest picks in the draft next year. So I'm leaving. I'm not cutting any quarterbacks. Running back. This may be a surprise because I haven't heard one other person say this, but I'm cutting Booker.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. 2.1 million cap savings. He did a great job last year for the role he was asked to do, filling in for Barkley while he was, coming back from the injury, the games that Barkley didn't play. But let's be blunt. He's average. He's 30 years old. He's not part of the future. If, we're using this year, we're going to try to squeeze as much orange juice as we can out of the Barkley orange. If Barkley plays, which we all hope he will, playing at a high level, we only need a quarterback to spell him every once in a while. If Barkley goes down, we still have, Gary Brightwell on the roster. They just signed in Tony Williams.
And I think that's the key, really.
Yeah. We can get by if we have to. And again, if Barkley is out for an extended period again, or he's just not good, I'm looking at 2023 anyway. So to me, I don't see the need for spending, over $2 million for, a guy like Booker.
Well, here's the thing. Let's talk about Booker for a moment. There's nothing wrong with him making that money. I think he's an average running back making pretty average skill position. I mean, that's not much money.
I think trying to get to $40 million.
I think he is the definition of a cap casualty. He is literally only being cut because of his cap number, and it's not even much. Just because he's not making $20 million does not mean he's not a cap casualty. He played perfectly well. It's not that he doesn't deserve the contract he has. It's not like he's overpaid. It's just simply that we can't afford a veteran average running back. We can't afford a veteran running back. We need people on rookie deals or like replacement level. Antonio Williams is only like 2 years away from being drafted.
We are officially in a rebuild. We are not in a faux rebuild. We are not in a I'm only half pregnant rebuild like we have it in the past. This is a full rebuild.
At least it seems that way, yeah.
And guys that are not part of the future, that are making, a decent chunk of change relative what their role is, are not going to be here anymore, according to me. Now we'll see if that's what, Joe Schoen and company thinks as well, but he's a cap casualty for me.
I'm keeping track on my calculator here. 2.1. Let's go.
Okay. Fullbacks, we don't have a fullback right now that's under contract, so we're not cutting anybody. And we have the next 2 months to talk about how we're going to replace these people that we have. So today is just an exercise in getting that number down. So
and by the way, the next 12 episodes that we're doing is all draft talk, and it's position by position. So we will get back to all of this. This is a preamble.
So on the comments or on Twitter at the Cranky Fan, don't bust my balls. Like, well, what are you going to do about him?
No, you can bust his balls.
I can bust my balls about a lot of things, but I get it. Okay, bust my balls about the Knicks. Go ahead.
All right, moving on.
Wide receiver.
Okay.
Well, I mean, the obvious one is Sterling Shepard. That's $4.5 million off the cap. He's coming off major surgery. Nice guy. He's been with the team a long time, but he's not part of the future.
And it's just the right time in his contract. I mean, there's a written out dead year. If he hadn't gotten hurt at the end of the year, we'd still be talking about this being a potential thing anyway. The added injury at the end of the year, which I believe was either torn or ruptured Achilles, I mean, that's something that I don't know how he's going to return from ever in his career for starters. And for the immediate future next year, there's no reason not to cut him. I know I would love to have the Sterling Shepard that went into this year, because he looked fucking good. I would love to have him on the team next year, but I don't know that that's what I'm getting, and it's
exactly
just a cost I don't have.
And you're going to see that as a common theme with me of I don't know what I'm getting, and we're not in the position of spending money right now for not sure things. Mm-hmm. We're not gambling from this stuff. The second receiver that's gone is Darius Layton. That's another $2.5 million off the cap right there. Never been a big Darius Layton fan. The guy to me comes up small when he's had the opportunity to show himself and to be in a big spot. He comes up small. Another cap casualty where the money is not that horrible, but in our situation, we are trying to do our best to keep assets that really will impact us. So these guys on the margins, and let's face it, Darius Layton what is he really? A 3 receiver?
Yeah, Darius Layton to me is a guy who has a skill set. He might even have a market value. So he might be someone that you might be able to turn into some kind of trade. I don't know for sure, but he might. I mean, he has a skill set. But like you said, he always scores those touchdowns on 40-yard bombs and 25-yard throws. They're always on like the opening drive or in the first half. And it's the fourth quarter and we're throwing bombs downfield and he's open. He comes up small. Or at least I have lots of memories of thinking, man, if only Slayton had caught that game wouldn't have gotten away from us. I have enough memories of that to say that I don't think he does anything that he can't be obtained somewhere else. And one of the draws to keeping Darius Layton over the years, even though he is just like a 3 or whatever, is that he was cheap. Our relative term for cheap has now changed.
Exactly.
And you know, he's also somebody that we're not really sure is even worth resigning. Probably not. So cutting bait now is not insane. I do like Darius Layton, not as much as I like Sterling Shepard or anything like that, but I would like to have him. But again, we are not at the point now where we should be taking luxuries. And for his credit, what is the 5th round, 6th round pick, whatever, I think he's performed above expectations for that. I think
5th round pick, yeah.
Yeah, he'll play somewhere else next year, I think.
Mm-hmm. And the other guy I would cut would be Colin Johnson, $895,000. Again, we are
$1 million.
Yeah, I mean, we are really going to the bone with this because again, you'll see where it makes more sense as we go down the list. But that's $895,000 of productivity that we really don't get. So he goes. Tight ends. Kyle Rudolph, $5 million.
Is that 5 or?
His cap savings is $5 million.
It's 5. Yeah.
Yeah. And Caden Smith.
Okay.
$2.5 million.
We're doing some interesting stuff right off.
We're doing some interesting stuff here. You could see that I am setting up a theme here that I'm not as concerned about the offense as kind of reverse thinking that you would think as much as maybe I am for defense down the line. So a little bit of a tease for later. But I understand that. I know that leaves us with Jake Hausman is the only tight end on the roster after that. But I think for 1 year, it's one of those things where, again, I don't care what our record is this year. We just get some replacement level guys just to get through this year. And then we also I'm going to talk when I'm done with this about my free agents and draft priority list. I have tight end as considered a placeholder level replacement where I'm not.
So like I said before, just because, there's a visual aid. If you guys are viewing on YouTube right there, expiring contracts are in red, current contracts are in white, so you can see what the Cranky fan did there by eliminating Kyle Rudolph and Caden Smith. That left us with just Jake Hausman right there. But that doesn't mean, like I said, clearing $40 million, that number is arbitrary, and it's way more than what's needed to just survive. Yeah. So that leaves room to replace some of the guys you have to cut.
Right.
We're not going to start guys for cheaper. Yeah.
We're not going to start the season by saying, look at us, we have a big bag of $40 million that we're not spending. I mean, we're not the Bengals. Mm-hmm. So this is just trying to getting us down to that number. So, again, don't freak out when you see there's no tight ends right now. Oh.
Right, and when you see, between Kyle Rudolph and Caden Smith is $10 million being spent, you can probably get 2 guys for $7 million to do those 2 jobs. Mm-hmm.
Right.
So that's kind of the thinking here, is that the $40 million is more than necessary so that things like this you can do without actually leaving yourself with just Jake Hausman in the draft.
Mm-hmm. Offensive line. That's the biggest need on this team, but that doesn't mean that we don't cut where we can here, so we can rebuild this offensive line. Matt Parrott, he's got to go.
Nice. I'm not the only one who did it.
$770,000 cap savings.
That's $1 million to me. I'm rounding up, man. I'm sorry.
Listen,
$770,000 is basically $800,000, which is more than $750,000, so it's $1 million. That's how I view it.
Wow. Wow. Okay. To me, another luxury. If we had a pretty good offensive line right now, I'd want to keep him continue his development. But quite frankly, we can't afford to keep him around and keep developing from when we saw a guy who couldn't beat out Nate Solder last year. So to me, I'm cutting bait. I'm starting over again. Wes Martin's the other guy who I'm cutting. $965,000 cap savings for that. So I'm saving 1.6 with those two guys right there. The offensive line of the future is not on this roster yet. I'm expecting, and I have this as, high level free agent / draft need offensive line. I think we'll get replacement level guys through the draft, guys that are better than these guys at lower cost also.
So that's your whole offense, right? That's everyone that you're cutting. That gets you down to something like 19.6 has been saved.
So right now I have saved
somewhere around that, right? You're pretty close to 20. You're almost halfway.
I'm almost halfway. So now let's get to the
all right, go ahead. Defense. You're living on a prayer. Halfway there. Anyway, go ahead.
Holy Jesus Christ.
Every time I hear someone say halfway there, it's the first thing I think of. I don't know how anyone could not think that. I don't even like that song. It's just...
there were bad Bon Jovi puns in tonight's Billions. I don't need them on this program either.
Oh, jeez. I'm so sorry you watched a bad TV show. And then had to do one. Go on. Defense.
Defensive line, we're not touching anybody because there's no cap savings to be made from anyone. And if
yeah.
And if we cut Leonard Williams, we'd be $8.3 million in the hole. So there's no reason to cut him.
Yeah, there's three guys that are untouchable in that their cap hits, their dead cap, I think, is higher than their cap hit. Mm-hmm. And it's Leonard Williams, Adoree Jackson, and I think Kenny Golladay are the three.
Azeez Ojulari also.
Oh, yeah. Well, but that's a rookie contract. That's how they're structured, yeah.
Yeah. So let's go to outside linebackers. O'Shane Ximenez, $995,000. Cut.
$1 million right there. Give me
that. Trent Harris, $965,000.
Another $1 million right there.
Yeah. So everybody else stays, but those two guys, again, for the production we get, those are cuts that we can easily take care of. Mm-hmm. I have linebacker as a high level priority for free agency and the draft also, by the way.
But I mean, and that was already the case, especially outside linebacker, that edge position. I mean, the thing is that cutting neither of these guys, we're probably one of the weakest teams in the league at edge rusher, and cutting two guys, one of which is probably considered a borderline starter with O'Shane Ximenez, cutting those two guys doesn't actually even impact our the strength of it. I mean, neither one. I mean, and Trent Harris might even be better than him, and he was like an undrafted free agent or something like that. This position group is so weak that actually subtraction here is really addition. This is a chance for us to grow and get better.
Mm-hmm. If we're talking about inside linebackers, T.J. Brunson at $874,000, and Blake Martinez at $8.5 million.
Yeah.
I thought long and hard about this one. I was trying to make it really work, but at the end of the day, major surgery, I can't, we're trying to minimize risk. We need every one of these roster spots to be efficient with the resources we're paying for them. And 8.5 is a lot of money from a guy coming back from major surgery. And it might take it might be another situation like Saquon Barkley, where it takes him a whole year to kind of play his way back into being even a shell of what he was before. Mm-hmm. And his contract ends after next year. So what are you doing? You're paying the guy.
You're paying the guy for his rehab
dollars to audition for his next contract somewhere else.
He's essentially just rehabbing for money.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you, and I would love to have Blake Martinez here, but I'm a big guy. So let's just pretend that last year was a successful year and this team is returning. Whatever, forget the coaching situation. Let's just say that they lost in the wild card round last year and it was an improvement. I'd still be looking to upgrade the inside linebacker position because Blake Martinez is only here for 2 more years anyway. So this was a spot that I already wanted to invest in. I mean, Tay Crowder is not going to cut it. I mean, he's growing and learning, but he's not even really a good number 2 inside linebacker. They needed talent in here anyway.
Well, think about this. I'm looking at, everybody gets on the roster right now. 7th round pick, 6th round pick, waivers, 7th round pick. Those, one of the big things people talk about in college is, do stars matter? Are
Yeah.
you a 5-star or a 4-star? There is, it's been graphed. You can see the odds of a guy making it to the NFL and the odds of that guy becoming an all-pro. If you're a 5-star, it's much higher than you're a 4-star, than you're a 3-star, whatever. The odds of you being an all-pro versus a starter versus making your second contract are much, much higher when you're a first-round pick versus a second round versus a third. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It's just the odds are more likely. And we're looking at a room right now where, you know, if we're getting rid of Blake Martinez, the highest guy is a 6th-round draft pick. So this room has to be upgraded regardless, to your point.
Exactly. I mean, this was something that already needed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, the injury too, you get the fact that he may be playing at a 4th-round pick player level. You know what I mean? Like, you're not even getting the same guy anyway, probably. So, to me, the injury just sealed what I was already investing in. Just means that I'm investing heavily into it. And this was a decision that I made last year during the bye week. You know what I mean? So, I'm right there with you. It sucks, but the injury makes you have to make that decision at this point.
Right. Cornerbacks. I made the decision. I'm keeping James Bradberry.
You're doing a pretty admirable job so far making it work. You're at 31.1-ish.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I think the way this defense is going to be, with the super aggressiveness of Wink Martindale, you have to have quality in the back end. And it's one thing to say, well, we're going to try to wing it with replacement level tight ends, maybe replacement level running backs. But if we have replacement level quality in the back end in your corners, they could lose every game 70-10, especially what we're trying to do. So I think that's where I'm keeping the luxury. I'm keeping the guy. He played better as the year went along. It's only one more year with him, but I think we need a stability as his first year of transition. I'm keeping him. I'm going to pay that, that I'm going to forego that $12 million cap savings.
Yeah, so let's talk about this a little bit, because this is the main point. This is a very tough exercise that Joe Schoen has let himself out for, is to create $40 million, because it makes you make this decision. Now, it's not that easy. And the reason why it's not that easy is because I don't like drafting corners in the first round. I think it's very difficult to say who will and won't be a good corner in the NFL. And every time I think I've figured it out, I'm not always right. I mean, I'm usually right 50% of the time.
And also, it takes a long time for these guys to develop.
Well, that's the other thing. Yeah.
It's not plug and play where you just, okay, you're a corner, go do it. It takes time to, like, that first year, what you're getting is more lumps than success in that first year.
Absolutely. And that's kind of the pain in the ass. I mean, you look at James Bradberry, and he really wasn't worth the contract that he bought until towards the end of his initial deal. Mm-hmm. So whenever you draft a guy super hard, there's a really good chance that you're investing like 2 years of their rookie contract into developing them for the NFL. And again, this is like a 50-50 shot for at least me. Whenever I try to figure these guys out, I'll say, like, these 5 corners are all going to be good in the NFL. 2 or 3 of them actually end up being that way, and the other 2 or 3 are duds. I mean, they're not even like, they're like backup level. It's really hard. So I don't like having to replace a James Bradberry with a draft pick. So if you're going to cut him, I don't know who you're signing to make that work, because you can't rely on Rodarius Williams, who is a 6th-round pick, who I don't want to take anything away from him. Certainly earned playing time very early last year, was very impressive, but still is coming off of an ACL tear in addition to that. Come on. That's the guy who's going to be starting next year, a 6th-round pick who has like 3 games under his belt and a worn-out ACL. That can't be...
Now, this doesn't mean we're not going to draft a cornerback, period, like maybe in the 3rd round or 4th round.
Again, James Bradberry is only here for 1 more year if you decide to keep him anyway. So this is a position that you're going to upgrade eventually, but you don't have to get a starter this year if you keep him. You can get a guy that maybe you think can develop into a starter, or you can get a backup level veteran to back everybody up or whatever, and then really go for... I mean, I really have no problem spending money for a quality veteran corner. You know what I mean? That's the one position. Spend the money, man. You know what you're getting most of the time. So this is like, I don't know how you can justify a roster at all and get rid of James Bradberry. It's really, 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 really difficult. So, when I start looking at guys who might be in there, and who can you? I mean, Jimmy Smith from Baltimore is already like 33, 34. That's ancient corner terms.
I mean, if we're building this thing, we're rebuilding. We're not. That's the old thinking for the Giants. That's when we're hanging on with Eli. Get a guy who's 33 for a year or two, and cap be damned. Just bring him in. We're not doing that anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're going to bring a guy in, you're going to have to bring somebody in that you think will be a future for this team, for this defense, whatever. So that means spending big. I mean, you're talking about a J.C. Jackson again. You're talking about Anthony Averett, Charvarius Ward. I mean, these are. To me, you're just subtracting one guy for another guy, and maybe that works if you're spending for a guy that perfectly fits what Martindale wants to do, and you can kind of make it so that it's not quite as much money. I don't really know. That can work, I guess, but you're really not going to end up saving that much, and it kind of speaks to this whole $40 billion and where that extra money is going to be spent and tied up in. I don't really know, but to me, the easier thing to do here to really plan things out is to keep James Bradberry at all costs if you can.
Yep. Safeties. I am going to let Julian Love go.
Interesting.
$2.5 million.
Yes,
another
sir.
cut. That wasn't easy, and it kind of goes counterintuitive to my making sure that back end is protected, but we're in a pickle here. We're in a bind. We're trying to get to $40 million. And,
well, they kind of screwed themselves with Logan Ryan's deal.
Yeah.
He's making a ton of money, and the dead cap is right up against the cap number. So
the
get
cap
almost
savings
nothing
is
for cutting him.
It's $775 for him, so it's just I decided to roll with him instead. Then finally, Riley Dixon for $2.8 million. We can't afford a $2.8 million punter, even though this offense may be punting quite a bit this year. But you can get a replacement level punter for cheaper than that. Yeah. And quite frankly, what I would do, we just signed this Jamie Gillian, $965 million. I'd cut him too. Seriously, I just think we have to, you just get a bare for 1 year. You get a minimum salary guy to come in, punt, and we'll worry about it the year after.
So they could shoot us at 37.4.
37.4. So I'm even then I'm not at $40 million, but that's okay. His goal is to get to $40 million, and I'm sorry, but it came down to $40 million or James Bradberry, and to me,
it came down between $3 million and James Bradberry. You were closer. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I'm going to get 90% of that $40 million savings. I've made some hard cuts, but I've also made some tough decisions on who I'm keeping, and this is what I'm rolling with.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I mean, the only positions that you really set yourself up where you got to do something right away, I would say tight end has to be done right away. Tackle, absolutely.
But we knew that already anyway.
Yeah. But again, we knew that already. But tackle, tight end, and then inside and outside linebacker. And I think you could make an argument for wide receiver and safety are secondary priorities there with what you've done. And that's not impossible with the amount of draft picks they have and with that extra money that they have, and especially since you don't have to spend any of that money on corners.
Right.
So that's like another $15 million that they can spend on, an inside linebacker, an edge presence, a backup tackle. You know what I mean? These things.
Or draft.
Yeah.
I mean, again, we're not as concerned about 2022. If you're drafting for these guys, you're giving them a year to get their feet wet, get developed, and then we start seeing the real results in 2023. I'm 100% fine with that.
So I'm not going to do mine by position. We have obviously a number of similar guys, right? So I'm going to go by what was most obvious to me, and that's kind of I started writing this before it was mostly written in my head while I was working this morning, and then I put all this down on paper afterwards or whatever on the screen on a document or whatever, and then I got the numbers out to see what else I needed to do. So this actually works out perfectly because we kind of already ran through the roster. So the first thing right off the bat, Blake Martinez, like I said, I had made that decision way back bye week. That's $8.5 million right there. You got that? Are you here? I'll keep track of myself here.
Oh, I supposed to be doing this?
No, it's okay. I got you. I got it.
I didn't know it was a homework assignment. Okay.
Sterling Shepard is another one. $4.5 million, somewhere around there, roughly. Right. I operate, by the way, in estimations. You did exact numbers, and that's awesome. You and I came to the same conclusion that 40 is a number pulled out of the air. Get close to 40, right? And I didn't hit 40 either, but I got close. Mm-hmm. So another 4.5 for Sterling Shepard. All right, we're at the 13 million. Kyle Rudolph is another one right off my head. I knew he was gone. $5 million right there. All right, we're up to 18 million. Mm-hmm. I did the same thing you did. Then that's when I started opening things up and looking at it a little bit. Devontae Booker, to me, we already discussed it. There's nothing wrong with him. There's nothing wrong with him making $2 million. There's just a problem with him making $2 million on this team. We cannot afford that production for $2 million. Mm-hmm. If that's the production we're getting, we need $1 million or less.
He's not Barry Sanders, guys. Yeah. He's Devontae Booker.
Riley Dixon, $3 million. Get the hell off my roster. Sorry. Again, I don't really have a problem with the guy. I'm sure he's worth $3 million for something, but it ain't punting on the Giants. I'll say that. Right after that, O'Shane Ximines, roughly $1 million. Doesn't rush the passer, doesn't do anything, never liked the draft pick to begin with. Wes Martin, another one that you said. Signed for 2 years last year when we desperately needed O-line help. We still do, but he's clearly not part of the future, and we're clearly going to invest a lot in it this year. $1 million right there. Trent Harris, same thing. I like the guy. He's actually pretty good for where he came from, but sorry, it's not enough. Matt Parrott, another one, $1 million. Can't beat out anybody. Injured at the end of the year. Cut losses. He's got no ties to this organization, and he was a high-risk, high-reward draft pick. At third round, he was either going to slam it. I mean, Jim Nagy went on record as saying that he might win the left tackle spot over Andrew Thomas, and I guess that was always the lofty ceiling that he could have reached, but instead he couldn't beat Nate Solder out at right tackle, and he's too much of a pansy to hit people, so he's not on the Giants anymore. Not for me, and he isn't. I was then in a pickle of choosing between Logan Ryan for $900K-ish or $775K, mainly because I don't think he's part of this future either. But I wasn't going to get rid of him and Julian Love, who was $2.5 million. And to me, what I really thought about was, at the end of the day, we need to get a safety on this roster to pair with Xavier McKinney long term. Neither one of Julian Love or Logan Ryan are probably those guys. But Julian Love has shown me that he can play versatilely. He's played Jabril Peppers' spot already, and he looks pretty okay at it. I'm okay keeping Julian Love, and Logan Ryan ended up staying only because his fucking cap is so ridiculous that the savings are not worth it. So I ended up keeping all the safeties.
It was that was the last one, which I thought about the longest. Am I going to launch him or not? And I decided to, thinking of total authority. That's the only reason why I did it.
And then, then I was stuck choosing between Darius Layton and Caden Smith. To me, they're both expendable, but because of the tight end situation, I feel that Caden Smith offers more than Darius Layton does. I think Darius Layton is a little bit more dime a dozen than Caden Smith is, which is interesting, but that's what I ended up doing. So I cut Darius Slayton, so that was $2.5 million right there, and that got me to 29.5, and it got me into some dark places here. Nick Gates was tough.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think that I didn't end up cutting him, but what I realized is that there's probably some level of negotiation there where you can probably work something out where you extend his contract or something. I mean, they have a good relationship between the Giants and him. He's coming off of a serious injury. I don't really know what it is you can do, but I think that there's probably something you can do there. And they're seeing his rehab and whatever, so I don't know his timetable and all that stuff.
And in fairness, for this exercise, we didn't consider contract renegotiations, cutting and re-signing, anything like that. It was just purely how are we trimming fat or trimming numbers. So.
And I think there is a chance of cutting and re-signing with Nick Gates, or something of that nature. For the purposes of the exercise, let's cut the $2 million. But I think that there's something that can be done there. And I don't know what his situation is going to be like in terms of if he'll ever play again, if he'll ever play well again, or what. The Giants have some level of insight into that. Graham Gano is somebody that I think is he's a possible extension. I think that you could probably save a cool $1 million somehow by extending it. And why the hell not? I mean, he's not kicking any worse. That he's kicking at a Pro Bowl level. But he's a kicker. I mean, Phil Dawson's like 44 when he retired. I mean, and he's kicking. If he's still kicking at a Pro Bowl level, I'm not cutting this guy until he's an absolute cap casualty. Which, by the way, he's not making that much. He's making like $3 million, $4 million.
Well, there's a negative negative 171,000 if you cut him. So
so you're not cutting him anyway. But I think he's on the books for the 2022 and 2023. I think you might be able to kick an extra year in there.
His cap number this year is 4.6 million. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you can spread that out and save yourself about $1 million there. So I have, let's add 1.5 million for that too. So I'm at 33 now. Okay. And then where I ended up is that why can't we try to extend James Bradberry? Now, I'm not big on kicking the can down the road, and I don't think that this general management or anyone is going to do that.
The only reason I didn't do any kickings down the cans of the road or whatever was he specifically said, I want to cut 40 million and I'm not kicking the can down the road.
Right, but
But we also said 40, and neither of us got to 40
exactly.
Either, so
I think that in general, what he means is that he doesn't want to make a bunch of solutions like that. But I think this is one where you might want to do it. We've already kind of discussed it. Getting rid of him detriments the team so much that I'm not even sure that we'll have a good insight on what the defense looks like. I don't know how you replace him without. And again, I don't know the specifics. I'm not very good at cap stuff. I don't know the logistics of cutting him for the $12 million savings and then signing some big name guy like Anthony Averett or Charvarius Ward or whoever to be the future of this team. And if that works out with the cap, like I don't know what that cap hit would look like or if that's feasible. If that's feasible, fine. Because like you said, he's going to turn 30 in 2 years. I don't know.
Well, yeah, again, I'm not sure how it works either, but I'm assuming if you whatever bonuses you're going to, most of it will probably be in bonus. So you can amortize that out for future years and spread it out a little bit. So it can't be an extension. It has to be a renegotiation starting with this year. Otherwise, you're not getting any savings this year.
Right. Exactly. Mm-hmm. But oftentimes that's by a renegotiation by adding a year and then spreading the
you're starting the dividing by 4 instead of by 3. Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that there's something that you might be able to do with James Bradberry to keep him around. And I don't... Again, I think this is like out of necessity. I think they've just kind of backed themselves into this corner. Now, if they fit... Like I said, I don't know. If you can sign somebody that you think might be the future and that all works out with cutting him and signing somebody else, whatever. But I think you can shave $5 million off by renegotiating his contract and kicking an extra year on there. And it's 1 year for one player. I don't think that this is really kicking the can down the road so much as it's surviving next year.
And a lot of his kicking the can down the road, I think, is signing guys to longer term deals and stuff,
yeah,
too.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think if you knock $5 million off, that puts me at about $38 million. So you and I are pretty much around the same area, 37 to 38 million. And we've got a roster with few holes.
Yeah. Well, then again, remember though, we're not going into the season on opening day with this roster.
Exactly. But these are holes that can be filled. Like I said, the tight end for me isn't as weak as you, but it still needs help. The offensive line needs a ton of help. In the edge presence, the inside linebacker, we picked most of the same guys.
But we knew those. Again, there's going to be a 2-part plan how they're going to rebuild this roster. Immediate replacement guys to get people on the field that can play, as well as, drafting elite talent that will replace that and be for the future of this team too.
Oh, and I didn't cut Brunson, and I should have. I completely looked over him, to be honest with you.
That's $174,000.
It's nearly $1 million right there. It's even less stuff you have to shave off of Bradberry's contract. Or maybe that gets you to about $35 million, and maybe 35 is close enough for Joe Schoen. I don't know.
Something that $40 million, who knows? He might have just threw that out there as like a trial balloon to see how will the media react, how will the fans react, how will people like us react. Maybe they had no sense in actually, that's a pretty aggressive number.
It really is.
I mean, who knows? I doubt that's dictated from ownership that you have to cut, this much or anything. I'd rather him be saying.
He also doesn't say that you need to. You don't. He also doesn't say you need to cut $40 million up front.
Right.
I mean, they only need to cut about $11 million to get under the cap. That's all they need to do right away.
Right. And we
the other $30 million that he wants to do can happen after you make draft picks and you decide who wins position battles.
Right.
So, I mean, this exercise, this is not going to be he's going to cut $40 million before the draft, much the same way that we cooked this episode up in 24 hours.
In cap space, right? Let's say we're $25 million under the cap. You can roll it over to next year, right?
Yes, but I don't know if it's the full amount, and I think you have to hit a floor, and there's all sorts of cap rules I don't know, and I should have went to law school. But that's it. I mean, we both kind of got close. It was we could both be Kevin Abrams, I guess.
We're better than Matt Millen, that's for sure.
Hey, how about that? All right, so that's gonna kind of do it for this episode, and that's it until the draft stuff. So that means starting next week, we are doing position by position draft work, and I'll give you a hint: we're not starting with quarterbacks. We're starting with safeties. We're going to start with safeties. I decided to keep it interesting and kind of grouped together as best I could. And also I tried to backload things that have lots of players so I can watch as many guys as I can to come as knowledgeable as I can to these episodes. So I've been working hard at this episode that you haven't even heard yet, that isn't coming out, that we haven't even recorded yet. I've been working at for weeks already.
He's the video guy, I'm the spreadsheet guy, so...
yeah.
I'll line him up. He'll knock him down for us.
There you go. Like that. Set him up and spike him. All right, everybody. I appreciate you all tuning in. If you are listening on YouTube, that's awesome. Please subscribe. That is totally awesome for us. And if you're just listening in the car on, iTunes or SoundCloud or Spotify or whatever, that's equally awesome. Give us a 5-star review if you thought that this was pretty good. That would rule too. And if you just like talking to people on social media, we're there too. At @football_grump, at the Cranky fan. I don't know, anything for the good people, Cranky fan?
I'm going to Nashville this weekend for the Winter Classic to see my Lightning. That's exciting. And I won't be going to any Knick games this week, which is even more exciting. Thank God.
Yeah, I don't have anything exciting. I just work on this stuff. So
good work, man.
But the good news is that for those of you who don't watch little clips from the episodes, they'll be on Twitter, so follow us on Twitter too, so you'll get the little video and all that other fun stuff.
Yep.
All right, everyone. We will see you next time. Go Giants.
Go Giants.